Okay, so this is the second part of section 2 of chapter 3 of the Savitch book, 10th edition. Now section 2 is multi-branching. I already talked about the part 1 in another video about the if-else branches. And now we're going to talk about the switch statement in this video. So you have seen that we can have if, else, if, and so on. And sometimes when we have a bunch of these things, it's going to get very, very messy, especially if we don't organize them correctly and we don't use functions. That's coming up in chapter 4 and 5. Your book is talking about functions in chapter 3, which we'll learn in chapter 4 and 5. So another way of doing this a little cleaner is called switch statement. So you can think about switch statements as a bunch of if-else statements, which have a little bit of a difference, and they're going to be looking much better. So let's jump into it and look at the switch statement. So when we have a switch statement, we will have, let me put this one over here. Well, that's good over here. So what we're going to have is the word switch, and then we're going to have braces for opening and closing braces. Then we have something in here. We have something that we are going to check for exact match. Okay, so we don't have greater, less than. It's got to be exact match. So in this case, we are checking the grade. And in this case, we are assuming that the user is going to enter letters as capital. So the grade is a character. We are expecting to be A, B, C, D, and so on. So if the grade is equal, so if the grade is equal A, I want to do this. If the grade is equal B, we're going to do this. So it's a bunch of if-else statement, if you want to think about it that way. So that's the way it's going to be. So we're going to have the word switch. We're going to have word case. For what cases are we going to be using? We're going to have the something that we're going to be checking for exact match. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is the word break. We're going to talk about it a little more. So we're going to be talking about break a little more, but for now, let's think about it. So break, the word break, is going to take you outside of your block. So this break is going to take me outside of the braces that I have. So what it says when you do this, just get out of this whole block of code. That means what? If I don't have this break, it's going to fall into this. So that was one of the things I clearly remember my first time coding, which was long time ago. And I forgot to put a break. And if I would have put A, it would have print, you need not to take the final. Then it would say, very good. Your midterm grade is now this, and passing and not passing, and so on and so forth. So we have to put a break to get out of this. That means when I do a case, I generally want to get out of here. Now, there is going to be times that I don't want to get out. So those times are, for example, in this case. So I have D and F. I want to do the same thing. So what happens if I get a D, because I don't have a break, it's going to fall into the same thing. If I have an F, it's going to do the same thing. So in case of D or F, it's going to do the same thing. I might have some cases that I want to do, for example, for A, I just want to say excellent. And then for B, I want to, so let's say if I didn't have a break over here. So it says, excellent, you do not take the final grade, very good, your midterm grade is now the grade. So it's going to do that, all of this if I get an A. So that's the word for the break. So we got to learn this, and it is going to get a lot more organized than if-else statement. One of my early jobs was in EDS. We were doing this software for other companies, and I was looking at some codes that they had an if statement somewhere, and pages somewhere else was else if. It was very messy, and it's very hard to follow. So let me put this one over here. I hope it's not blocking too much. Well, let me put it back. Okay, so I'm going to clear the drawing, and I'm going to go on to next part. So this is the way we're going to construct the switch statement. We're going to have the switch controlling expression. We're going to have case. We have to be sure we're going to put the colon after it. And then we're going to need the break. So we're sure it's not going to fall into the next one. If we want it to fall in the next one, then we don't have a break. And then the key over here is the default. Default is going to catch the other condition that we didn't mention here. So if we are looking at the grade, A, B, C, D, and F, anything else that the user insert is going to be right here. So warning, you put the wrong character or some statement like that. Or, we want to, if it's not those, what are we going to do? So we want to, just like an if-else statement, that we want to have a final else for all other conditions. In here, we want to be sure that we have the default. That's going to cover all other ones. Okay, so what can we use for switch? It says Boolean. I generally wouldn't use a Boolean. Boolean is true or false. For a Boolean, I don't know. I would generally use a if statement. Enum, we didn't talk about it that much. Your book doesn't explain enum very well. But if you want to work on it, I worked with you for the enum. It's an interesting concept, but your book is not explaining it very well. And I kind of skip over it because my new students get a little confused with it. But if you are interested and you read it and you want to do it, that we can go over it together. The most common ones are integer and character. And remember, these are going to be exact match. So for double with a decimal point, you can never, ever get exact match. I would say the chances are so low because remember, the decimal can have multiple variation of decimal. So I can have 15.0 versus 15.000001. So you can almost never get an exact match for double. So integer, character are the one that we generally use most of the time. And of course, enum, if you get to it, that's not a bad concept to use. So whatever we're doing, we're going to check it in the case for exact match. And now we're talking about the break. As I said, break is going to take you out of your block of code. You can use break in any other places like while loop, do while. So you get to the point and say, you know what, I don't want to continue anymore. If this condition happened, I don't want to continue anymore. So you can use a break to get out. So break is going to take you outside of your block of code. So in this case, we want to do capital A and lowercase a. Later on, we'll learn how to change our character so we don't have to do this. So if I have cases like this, then I put them next to each other. I don't use a break. So both of these are going to display the same thing. So I don't have to have two block of code, one for capital A, one for lowercase a. Okay, and we want to have the default for any other cases. And so when we have a menu, and we're going to start using menus pretty soon, I want to kind of wait to get to functions, because when you're doing the menu, it's going to be much better to use it with function, much cleaner to do it, but you can think about it. So generally when we have a menu, we definitely want to use a switch statement, much cleaner, much easier to follow. So in this case, it's displaying 1, 2, 3, 4, displaying the menu, and then the switch statement is going to check to see if the user put 1. We're going to do this. We're going to do 2. We're going to do this. We're going to do push 3. We're going to do that. And if it's 4, we don't have to do anything. It's going to get out, and we can have a default. Let's say, you know what, you put the wrong one. Let's do it again. Okay. So that's what I want to talk about, the switch statement, and that's end our section 2. So I'll see you in class.